we have a new WBA Super World Bantamweight Champion, new WBA 118-pound champion by the name of Zhanat Zhakiyanov. Managed to pull off a split decision, definitely a hard-fought, well-fought split decision over Rau'shee Warren. This is a very tough fight, especially in the early going for Zhakiyanov. Rau'shee Warren managed to score a 10-7 round. The first round, dropping Zhakiyanov twice. At first, it just seemed like the height, the reach, the speed, the overall, athletic skill, just as quick as Warren was in the opening and as quick as he started in terms of hard punches being thrown at Zhakiyanov. It looked like it was just going to be too much, too fast, and too much too early. He kind of caught Zhakiyanov cold, dropped him twice in the first round, had him very wobbly towards the end of the first round. Even had him a bit wobbly in the second round too. It just seemed like he was catching him with shots he really couldn't see coming. Warren, tricky southpaw with a hell of a lot of hand speed, good foot speed as well. And Zhakiyanov wasn't quite able to navigate the distance at first. Even though for whatever reason Boxrec has Zhakiyanov listed at 5'7", the guy is probably 5'2", maybe 5'3", maybe that's probably pushing it though. He's probably more like 5'2.5" or something like that. Because Rau'shee Warren was definitely taller than him, and Warren's only about 5'4.5", maybe 5'5". But you could just tell that Warren had a height advantage, a reach advantage, definitely a big speed advantage early on. He was making the most of that, making good use of it at first. But as early as the third round, it seemed like he was starting to slow down just a bit, starting to hold a little bit more. The work rate definitely fell in a major way, and the hand speed as well. Just the hand speed and the overall leverage, that overall snap and the pop on the shots started to kind of fall by the wayside, and that's when Zhakiyanov really managed to have his opportunities. Pretty much the third round going into the fourth round, where he started to seize more control of the action, was able to cut off the ring a little bit better. Came in with nice, nasty hooks to the body, as well as a pretty well hidden kind of right hooking cross up top. Really good at just shortening up his shots and just shooting out some nice hooks on the inside, whether it be to the body or the head, doubling and tripling up on him as well. And he was giving Warren a lot of problems with that. I mean, to the extent where pretty much probably by the mid-rounds, even though Warren still had the fight in terms of points, like just in terms of the fact that he was up on points because of the 10-7 round. Zhakiyanov was definitely turning the tide in his favor. Zhakiyanov also probably should have gotten 2 knockdowns on 2 different separate occasions. He scored a knockdown in round 3, and also a knockdown, I believe it might have been in round 8, if I remember correctly, either round 6 or round 8. And that was a shot where he managed to land 2 right hands in a row on Warren, as Warren was up against the ropes, kind of trying to do a shoulder roll, but he just caught both of those right hands flush and kind of fell face first after maybe like a split-second momentary lapse, just like a momentary lull in the action, where it was a delayed reaction basically of him getting hurt after those 2 shots and then kind of falling forward. But the ref basically called it a slip or a push because of the delayed reaction, and so Zhakiyanov unfortunately wasn't able to get the points for that. Turns out that he didn't wind up needing it. He managed to pretty much sweep the championship rounds on my scorecard. I had it relatively close. I mean, all things considered. I thought it was basically an 8 rounds to 4 fight, but I did give Zhakiyanov 2 10-8 rounds because I thought he deserved them. He scored knockdowns, and even though the ref didn't call them knockdowns, they were knockdowns, and they were rounds where he otherwise pretty much whooped Rau'shee Warren's ass. And even though the 2 of those rounds probably that I gave Warren, he probably didn't necessarily. I'll put it this way: he definitely didn't win them clearly. This could have very easily been a 10-2 fight for Zhakiyanov. The judges wound up scoring it a split decision. One judge had it for Warren. I believe it was 115 to 111. The other judge had it 115 to 111 for Zhakiyanov, and then the third judge had it 116 to 110 for Zhakiyanov. I'd say both scores for Zhakiyanov probably tell the tale of the fight, pretty accurately. The one for Warren is being overly generous to Warren, up to the point where if all 3 judges had scored that, this would have been pretty much a robbery, basically. The wrong man definitely would have won if that had been the case. But Zhakiyanov went to hostile territory, went to Toledo, Ohio. Basically, Rau'shee Warren's stomping grounds, as far as anybody's really concerned, right there in Ohio, where, Broner's at, where Easter's at. Of course, Robert Easter found in this card as well. I'll talk about his fight in a separate video. But I mean, this was a great fight, a great action-packed fight, especially as it got through the mid-rounds. Once it got into the late rounds, though, it tended to be a lot more of Zhakiyanov just pretty much just putting it on Warren and exposing Warren's overall lack of a great stamina base. And I mean, even more so, because even though he had shown some stamina issues in some of his past fights, particularly in the 2 fights versus Juan Carlos Payano, one of which he lost, one of which he won. He lost the first fight, won the second one. Personally, I thought he actually lost both fights. I thought I scored both fights for Payano. I think Zhakiyanov, just his overall physicality, his physical strength, in spite of the fact that he didn't necessarily have the high work rate of a Payano and the punch variety, just physically just was manhandling and Warren. And Warren just didn't seem to be in as good of a shape for this fight even. And those old stamina issues definitely reared their head once again. And reared their head in enough of a way, and in significant enough of a way, that he wound up losing this fight. And, losing really more clearly than the split decision would lead you to believe, just looking at it on paper. But we have a new champion, as I said, Zhakiyanov, now the WBA champion. Basically, his mandatory is going to be Jamie McDonnell. Should McDonnell stick around at bantamweight and keep that WBA regular title. The WBA recently mandated that he has to rematch Liborio Solis, the fighter that he fought, about 3 months ago, and basically got a robbery decision over. Liborio Solis pretty much manhandled him, beat him down, beat him up, outboxed him, the whole nine. And, probably one of the worst decisions of 2016. If Solis fights McDonnell again, I have no doubt that Solis probably wins that fight. And I think Solis versus Rau'shee Warren is a fantastic matchup, should that happen to actually go down. I think it's a great fight. I would definitely favor Solis, though. I think overall he has a little bit more tools to work with versus Zhakiyanov. But at the same time, Zhakiyanov, he has a style that I think would be very, very tough for Solis. Solis is a guy that's used to being able to kind of bully guys and just land that overhand right. Zhakiyanov has a fantastic overhand right of his own, and he's a very strong physical guy himself, and just in a battle of strength and will versus strength and will, it's definitely anybody's game as far as I'm concerned. Either guy could win a decision or probably score a knockout, and I would see that fight likely ending with a knockout. It's very difficult for me to see those two styles particularly clashing and somebody not ending up getting laid out and put down for the count completely. I could definitely see, a fight of the year candidate coming up out of that. As for Rau'shee Warren, I'm not necessarily sure where he's going to go from here. If he's going to be able to get possibly a shot at one of the other titles. I have mentioned the fact that I do think that if he was able to make 115, there might be a little bit more money out there for him. I think I would give him a good chance against Kal Yafai and Zhakiyanov, WBA and IBF champs. But even if he stayed at bantamweight, I think he'd have a good shot, especially at Lee Haskins, the IBF champion. I think he's probably the weakest of the champs, of the belt holders at 118 pounds. I'd give him a good shot against Marlon Tapales, too, although Tapales is a pretty big puncher, and he's a gritty fighter himself. So that's a real tough one. Incidentally, Tapales' new mandatory for that WBO belt is going to be decided in a couple of months here between Arthur Villanueva and Zolani Tete, and that's a fantastic fight. Probably two of the best fighters at bantamweight without belts. Tete, former champion at 115 pounds, and Arthur Villanueva, former title challenger. He's actually the guy that McJoe Arroyo defeated in order to win the vacant belt, which he has since lost to German Akas back at 115. But both are at 118 now, and very, very top flight bantamweights at the weight class. I mean, they're guys that I could very easily see either of them getting belts on their own, but they're actually going to wind up fighting each other before they even get a title shot. So I think that's a fantastic fight to be had. But Zhakiyanov against pretty much any of the guys that I named, I think is an excellent fight. I'm hoping that if McDonnell chooses to vacate the division entirely, Zhakiyanov versus Liborio Solis would come off. I think that's an excellent fight. Zhakiyanov versus Juan Carlos Payano, I think, is a great fight. Rau'shee Warren, if he could fit into maybe one of those other title shots, I think there's plenty of opportunity out there for him. He's still pretty early in his professional career. I mean, he even mentioned it in the telecast. He talked about the fact that he got his first title shot at 14 fights in. Could definitely work on his gas tank. I wouldn't be surprised if he might just be fighting too high. I mean, he's a guy that in the amateurs, he fought in the Olympics at 106 pounds, then 113 pounds, and 114 pounds. And the whole thing is, I mean, if you're making 114 for a week and a half, or at the very least for the early days of the Olympics, and you're making that weight on fight day, and you're making that weight, and then you're immediately fighting like a few hours afterwards. I mean, you should be able to make 112 or at least 115, with a 30-hour advance in order to be able to rehydrate, refeed yourself, and the whole nine. So, if Warren was to drop, I think, it might help his gas tank. He might be in better shape. He might be forced to be in better shape in order to make 115 as opposed to 118, where he might be cutting a few corners. It might just be easy enough for him to make that. He just basically cuts a few pounds, maybe like 5-6 pounds in the last couple of days, and it's not a thing. It's like he's comfy in order to be able to do that. Sometimes you got to make yourself uncomfortable in order to be able to put yourself in optimal ability to win a particular fight or win in a particular division. But as far as it goes, I mean, Warren definitely has a lot of good tools. He just needs to shore up that stamina, shore up that endurance, work on those things definitely, and get maybe a little bit more crafty on the inside. Not do so much holding, but maybe crack a guy before you grab him, and then hit him on the way out of breaking your own clinch, as opposed to making the ref break him for you. But Zhakiyanov did a very impressive job. Definitely an impressive bantamweight. I think he's definitely right up there as one of the top bantamweights, right behind Shinsuke Yamanaka. Yamanaka definitely reigns supreme at bantamweight with the win over the recent knockout victory over Anselmo Moreno. Definitely the top bantamweight at the moment. But right behind him is the likes of Zhakiyanov, the likes of Payano, the likes of Villanueva and Tete, and the other champions as well, McDonald, Haskins, etc. Tapales as well. But that's pretty much all I got to say for this one. Really fun fight to watch. Very impressive win for Zhakiyanov. Tough loss for Rau'shee Warren, but he's a guy that I think definitely has some improvements to make, and he could definitely still continue writing some chapters in that book that is his career. So that's all I got to say for this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.